Okay, part two. After taking some time and thinking about it, I realized that the sword was just looking a little bit too thick with so many layers on it, and I wanted to keep it a little bit thinner, more elegant, more true to what it's supposed to look like. So what I did is decided first it was going to be with these thick ones on here, and that was just making it way too big. So then I decided maybe I would go with some 1/4 inch instead, but still that wasn't quite the way I wanted to look. So what I decided to do was I actually made the marker line on, traced the pattern on, and I actually carved away the layers. Instead of adding, I subtracted to make it a little bit thinner. So now I'll probably still go back and add a little bit of thickness here and a little bit onto the bottom where it's thicker there. But for the rest of it, it'll just be taking away from the foam rather than adding to it. Okay, I've put a smaller sanding bit on the Dremel and gone in and done a little bit more detail on the hilt and around the blade. Now a lot of people ask me about when they're sanding, how they get the foam to be smooth. Now you can see here it's really furry, almost like fur and kind of rough. Now when you get that, that's from using a brand new sanding bit, a very rough sanding bit, and that's really coarse. It's going to cause it to rip it and rough it up like that. So what you want to do is you can get different grits of these to get finer and finer and work it down, make it smoother and smoother. But what I actually use on the very end to polish it to make this nice and smooth is I'll actually have a bit that's dulled down. Like you can take a new one of these and just run it against concrete or whatever and just tear it up to where it's just no grit left on it at all. And you can see here, I don't know if you can see in the video, it's really, really smooth. And basically what it does is it just rubs the foam more so than grinds it. Sort of a heat buffs or heat polishes it. And that works really good for making a nice smooth polished edge on it. Okay, you can see I've taken and gone back and sanded back over this with the smooth sanding bit, the dull sanding bit, and you can see it's a big difference from the other one. No more fur, nice and smooth. Another trick you can do is actually on this, after you've done sanding it, you can take the heat gun and hit it real fast with the heat gun, and what it'll actually do is it'll sort of temper the foam. It'll cause the foam to briefly expand and then contract, and it'll actually will decrease the size of the cell structure, tightening it up a little bit. So it makes it a little bit firmer, a little more rigid, and it'll smooth it out a little bit as well. Okay, I've taken basically a ballpoint pen and just started to draw in a little bit of the detailing of the patterning where it'll be. What I'll do later is I'll go in with the hot knife that I showed you earlier with a different tip on it. Using different tips, and I'll actually burn out the patterns into it. And I've also cut out these pieces here, which are 1/4 inch thick craft foam, and these will go on top to make it a little bit thicker here. I'm just going to glue those onto the top, and I'll probably also cut one that'll cap on the bottom too in a little bit. Okay, all the basic construction is now done on the sword. It's just a lot of detailing to do. And then painting, and should be all done. Okay, I've got all the details pretty much drawn in with a pen now, and I'll go back with the hot knife with the special tiny little tips on it, and I'll actually burn out all the detail on it to give it more texture, more depth. And I got next to measuring tape here for people to go scale wise. It's about 35 inches long. And there's my cat checking it out. Okay, I've got most of the details kind of burned into it now. A little bit more refining, go in with a little bit of a couple different tips, do little touch-ups, and then it's time to paint. Okay, and here's the sword after painting. It's pretty much done now, with maybe another coat or two of clear coat to gloss it up a little bit. Again, this was just a test run to see how the foam would work to make a sword. I learned a lot of stuff making this one, what not to do for when I make the ones for my final costume. I did take some liberties with this one and altered it a little bit from the actual game version. In the game, it's a little bit more organic around the bottom of the sword there. I made mine a little bit more smooth and streamlined. And on the blade, I tested a new sealant on the foam to see how it would work. And when I put the paint on, it kind of gave me a crackled effect, which would be good for certain applications, but I'm not sure if I like exactly the way it turned out on this, so that I'll probably change on the final one. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with the way it came out for a test. It's pretty decent.